What's up, Dean? Thank you very much for joining us today. So you're around the shop all the time, so you know that everyone seems to have a car story. And we did this last week with Jimmy, and you were the next one that came to mind because I know you have a lengthy history with cars, and that's actually how I met you. So tell us a little bit about why you're a car guy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate being involved.
For sure.
I started when I was a little kid. Remember my first vivid car memory. My dad had a '74 Buick Regal that always sat in the garage. It was like a real light baby blue color. It had a real distinct smell to it, and it sat in the garage all the time. I don't know if it was just musty or like there was mold in it, but my mom absolutely hated it. So we very rarely went out for drives in it. But every now and again, on a nice day, we'd pull it out of the garage, and we would take it through the back roads around Ligonier, and my dad was always really proud when, for whatever reason, going from second to third gear, if he was in it, they would start to spin tire again. Yeah. So he would just mash on it, and like we're going through corners, we should have died all the time. It was way too fast. But I can smell it right now thinking about it. It just...
Something that's weird about that is I think my first car memory, and I didn't even realize this until you just said that, is my parents had a Ford Taurus. I think that's what it was. I was like, I was probably 3 or 4. Like, I was really young. And they asked me to crawl into the trunk to look for like a leak, a water leak or something, because it smelled musty. So that just reminded me of that. That's really funny. So your dad had the Regal. What was the family car at that point if you weren't taking the Regal everywhere? Do you remember that?
The first one I really remember, my dad had a late 90s, probably like a 98 or 99 F-150. And there was a black one and a teal one that were almost identical. But right after we got the black one, on our way to Racetown Lake going camping one weekend, the engine blew up. It was pretty new. I've never heard my dad swear so much in my entire life, and that's saying a lot about him.
I've heard your dad, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got one that was almost identical, and it was teal right after that. I think we had that, and my mom had, I think, a white Expedition. The thing was massive. But we always had big cars. That was a theme in the whole family.
Well, that's funny because, and we'll get to that, but how I met you, you also had a big car. So tell me about your very first car, because I'm not even sure if I know what that was.
The very first one was a 1998 Buick Regal. It was black on black, everything on the exterior with chrome 16-inch wheels. It just had like the Buick logo in the center, and like a fully loaded interior, I guess, for the time.
As Buicks do.
Yeah, heated seats, which spoiled me. I'll never, ever get a car without heated seats for the rest of my life.
And so what year was this when you were?
I would have got the car in 2010.
So 98 is crazy for heated seats.
Yeah, and I think at the time they were just trying to keep up with the Cadillacs that were similar, cause all the DeVilles and stuff like that, and Lincolns, that they tried to make it fancy. I thought that thing was like a race car when I got it, because anything Buick made, I associated with my dad's car. Okay. So that's why I liked it at first when I found it on Craigslist. It was like, yeah, my dad had a Regal, now I'm getting one. But everyone thinks of that generation Buick Regal as the classic grandpa car. Yeah. Like, which it was really fun, and I was one of the first in my friend group to have a car, so we drove that thing everywhere.
You were the school bus.
Yeah.
Yeah, my friend Nick was the first one in our group to have it, and he had his mom's minivan. I think it was a Plymouth. He picked up everybody. So you were that guy.
Yeah, but I absolutely loved it. I learned very on that I loved driving, even though I never really was taught how to drive specifically, or no one in my family except my uncle raced or anything. But I just loved being behind the wheel. Like, I loved the freedom, obviously, and especially when you're just turning 16, being one of the kids that has a car, like...
Yeah, you're the cool kid.
Well, not necessarily that, but you're... All of a sudden, everyone wants to be your friend.
For sure.
And, but my buddies and I loved cruising around in that, going to events and stuff, and just driving up the Lynn Run to, like, go swimming and stuff. It was awesome.
All right, so you got the Regal, that's your first car. What was the eventual demise of that? Did you sell it? Did you wreck it? What happened to that first car? Do you still have it?
Unfortunately not. I would love to find it, but it's probably also in a junkyard somewhere. So there were two things that happened within the course of a month that made me want to get rid of it. I'm sure a lot of people that live around here will remember the really intense hailstorm that we had in
2011?
Yes, I want to say it was 11. It was late in 11. I was driving to Ligonier. I had gone over to my friend's house, and this storm unloaded. The sky is green. Yep. I'd never seen hail this large in my life, and thankfully I was able to kind of get under an overhang at the local Ramada Hotel in Ligonier, but my car got completely destroyed. It looked like a big black golf ball, basically. So I was already mad that happened because I took so much pride in how I took care of it. I washed it all the time. Like, it was my baby. I was so proud of the car. Then a few weeks later, I had a bunch of my friends with me, and we were going over to a birthday party. One of our friends had just turned 18. So there's 5 of us in the car. You could really only fit 4. And we're just going like a mile down the road, and one of our friends was in the trunk. So
naturally.
Yeah, of course, as one does. And the little compartment in the back seat was down, so we could like see them and talk to them, but they're just their heads sticking out. Well, we're pulling in 100%. We're pulling into a parking lot, and there's a speed bump. And it's, you know, I see it's there. I'm not going that fast, probably 5 or 6. And as we hit the speed bump, we hear this horrible crack coming from the back of the car. And it just sounded like metal. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? So we stop, and we let our friend out of the trunk. Both of the struts pushed the entire way up through the wheel well into the trunk.
At the same time?
Yes. Like there were, I guess that was a spot where they rusted all the time. And they just shot straight up into the roof of the quarter panel, basically. And it just, like, completely destroyed the back end of the car. So it's sitting like this, and I couldn't really drive it. But I got, like, a week later, we had one of our buddies push them back down, welded it together, and I sold it, like, 2 days later. I posted it on Craigslist, and within 24 hours, it was gone.
Nice.
But
and you obviously disclosed to that person.
I mean, I showed them that we had fixed it, but I didn't tell them how it got broke. But I miss that thing so much. That was the only car that I never really modified, like with window tint or any of the stuff I know about now. But yeah, it was fun, and it was reliable, and I had a lot of good memories in that thing.
So that's a common theme I'm finding the more people I talk to about this. It's not even necessarily the car. For car guys, a lot of it has to do with the car. But even when you talk to non-car people, everybody sort of lights up the same way, and it's the memories that surround the car. So it's all the trips you took with all your friends and all that kind of stuff. You mentioned that your uncle raced. Tell me a little bit about that. Did he have any influence on you with the car stuff growing up, or?
I would say in a small way. My Uncle Mark and I weren't really close when I was a kid, just because he was always very busy working. He ran a machine shop, and I got to see him at family events and stuff like that. But he always had cool cars. The first one I really remember, he had a Corvette, which was the first time I went for riding one. I want to say it was either black or red. I can't quite remember. But it had the pop-up headlights on it. And I'm 99% sure it was a Z06. It was loud as hell, and when he first got it, he was super proud of it, and it might have been his first vet. So he's going over to see the family all the time and taking everybody for rides in it. And he took it on Old Route 30, which is like a goat path, basically, and he's just slamming this thing through the gears. I've never was so scared in my entire life because I had never been in a car like that. My dad's Regal was fast for what it was, but like...
Yeah, the Corvette's a whole other level.
Yeah, nothing with, 400 horsepower or whatever. It was kind of terrifying. But I remember when I got out of it, I loved it. And I was just like, Dad, why is your truck so slow?
Okay, so he kind of got you hooked on going fast a little bit.
But yeah, we never really had anything comparable to that when I was a kid. So... it was like the trucks, and my dad had a OG Bronco that was awesome. I always called it the bouncy truck. We'd drive it up the mountain, and like back then going up the Lynn Run, it wasn't paved. So you're just doing this the entire time, and that's also probably one of my earliest memories. I have no idea where that thing is now. Probably in the junkyard.
Yeah. Unfortunately, up here, most things end up there. I'm going to lead into this one since I know you a little bit. This is a story that I know exists, but I haven't dived into it deeply with you. So I remember when we did the extreme experience at Pit Race. there was a specific moment, you know, we're a shop full of guys, and so we're always kind of picking at each other, making fun of each other, and there was a specific moment where you put driving gloves on. And of course, some of the guys from the shop thought that that was funny, and it just sort of became like a joke. But then when you got out of the car, you started to explain why you had those, and everybody just sort of stopped making fun of you and realized that it was a really cool backstory. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's in a weird way a little tough to talk about. My grandfather and I, on my mom's side, we weren't always super close when I was growing up, but and unfortunately, we didn't really have a strong relationship until he got cancer, and we just started spending a lot more time together and just talking and really getting to know each other, as odd as it was when I was, you know, 18, 19 at this point. And when that first happened, I remember very distinctly I was actually living with them at the time, and I was playing Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed on my laptop. One of the best games ever. I could put it in right now if I had something that ran it. I do too.
And I still have the things that run it. We should play that later.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Absolutely. You can even, I guess, get it on PlayStation 1 or something like that too. But I was playing the game, and he'd walk behind me and was like, oh, you know, what's this? And starts asking me about things. And then there was a mode where you could go into a gallery where they showed you all the different examples of the cars over the years. And then he starts telling me about his first Porsche, and which I believe was an orange 914. I can't remember the color exactly, but or maybe that was the one in the game, but that was the one that we found. And he talked to me about how much he loved the cars, and you know, if they were a little bit less expensive, you know, he would have bought more, and he always wanted a 911. But he always had like a Mercedes and a BMW. Like he had a V12 7 Series, which was cool too.
Oh, those are cool.
As we spent more time together and as he got sicker, you know, we just talked a lot about cars and how much he loved them, and I realized how many different ones he had. And right before he passed away, he gave me a set of driving gloves that were red and black that he got when he served in the military and he was stationed in Germany. And you know, he always just talked about wanting to get something really cool and fast, and drive them with those on. And he thought that a 911 would be perfect because they were from there. And the tag is still in it that shows where they were made.
That's cool.
So when we got to go to Extreme Experience, even though there was a line a mile long and I could have driven any of the other cars there with no wait whatsoever, I had to drive the Porsche. And I tried to keep it a secret, because I knew I was going to get made fun of. But I know he was there with me that day, and he was pushing me to go as hard as I could. And like I said, I don't have a ton of driving experience, but I guess I can throw a car around as good as any other amateur can. But I felt like he was there with me, and it was just really cool to do that and have those on. So once this thing's all done, I'll definitely be wearing those while I drive this.
And that leads me to my next question. So that's a super cool story. Thank you for sharing that. I know that's like super personal, but I remember you talking about that at the racetrack, and it was just like, it was cool. There was a real reason behind why you had those on and why you were in that car and everything. I love it. So that leads me to this. Right behind you, or to your right, I guess, is your Porsche 944. So close us out talking just a little bit about this thing. I know a lot about it, so tell our viewers, what did you do to it? What's the significance of it? How much do you love it? This is your car you have now, right?
Yeah. Well, this is basically a 4-year-long saga at this point. It would have been early April of 2018. My daily driver at the time, my Chrysler 300, my alternator went bad while I was driving to a job, and I got stranded in on my way to Somerset, basically. And then I didn't have a car for a week because they had to wait for the parts to come in. So you, thankfully, let me borrow your 944 to drive around for a week so I could get back and forth to work, which was awesome. At first, I thought it was just this weird, like, I had no idea that it even existed before. It didn't look like a Porsche to me. I don't even remember ever seeing one in the games that I had played. But I drove it for a week, even just back and forth from the shop to Ligonier, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And then a month later, I bought my own. So I picked it up for $800. It was an absolute pile of garbage.
I remember the day you brought it back.
Yeah, I don't know how I drove it home without blowing it up. Didn't know what an interference engine was at the time. Didn't have any idea if the water pump or the timing belts or anything had been replaced. Like, there's no reason it should have made it back 3.5 hours on the turnpike. Like, I should have been on a flatbed, and I don't know how we made it, but we did. And for the last almost 4 years, we've completely, torn apart and rebuilt the engine. The local tech school, EWCTC, painted it for me, and they did a fantastic job. Yep. A bunch of juniors in high school, and they did better work than some of the shops that I've seen put out work around here. They did an awesome job. And once I get the interior finished, I think it's going to look really good, and I'm just excited to drive it. I've had it for 4 years, and I think minus bringing it back, I've put less than 100 miles on the car, which is sad. But I'm so excited just to, bang through the gears on the road and take it on some twisty back roads and just see what kind of trouble I can get into. I absolutely love it.
That's cool. And yeah, briefly, just the story of how we met each other was through cars. You brought the Cadillac. Was that a DeVille or a Seville?
That was a DeVille.
DeVille, the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you brought that in for a sound system and tint and stuff, right?
Yeah. I bought it the day before my first day of senior year. One of my buddies said, you can't drive a Cadillac without limo tint, and you had just worked on his car. I had no idea who you were, and so he's like, oh yeah, talk to this guy Josh. He'll take good care of you. They do a good job. So I pull up. It's just one little single bay garage, back when you'd first started.
That was just me and Keith at that point, probably, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, the heck did I get myself into? Yeah. And then we wound up just, shooting the breeze for 3 hours while you worked on it. You guys invited me to China Garden. We had lunch together, and then it turned out great. We did limo tint all the way around, and then I just kept coming back. Every car I got, I would just keep bringing to you guys to do stuff. Always got tint, a couple sound systems, and I just wouldn't leave you alone, and eventually we started becoming buddies.
You want to go do karate in the garage? Yup.
So Dean, thanks again for joining us. I knew you'd have some good car stories because I knew there was a lot of them in the past there. And I love the 944. I love what you've done with this thing. I can't wait to see it on the road and maybe take mine out with you. Go for a little cruise. I know you want to drive it to Carlisle, the big Porsche show this year. So that's the goal, right?
Yeah, I'm so excited. I got it right after the show. I went with you 4 years ago. Right. So it seems apropos that that's like the first road trip.
Perfect. Well, we'll keep them updated if you end up driving it to Carlisle. Thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.